Welcome back to Unfiltered Unspoken. And we love to see smiles on our guest face in the beginning. So it is such an honor. We want to thank Sara Bohling. Did I say that correctly,
Yep,
Sara?
perfect.
For being a guest on Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. As we told you, we're going to continue to bring life experiences in hopes that we can help someone else start the journey to healing with suggestions or advice, or just to see what another person went through to start the journey to healing. Sara, thank you and welcome to Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? And then, as you know, once Sara finishes, Sid is going to kick off the first question.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you and spend time together today. So my name is Sara Bohling. I am a wife, a mom. I have two teenage girls, almost teenage, 12. That feels like a teenager nowadays. I have been a nurse for over 20 years, and it feels like from day one, my life has been challenging, to say the least. I tend to be the person who gets the unusual, rare, oh, isn't that interesting type of situations and challenges. And it's really crafted a deep sense of perseverance in my own life to overcome these hurdles and keep going with a positive attitude and a joyful mindset.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for joining us this evening. Excuse me. So we always jump into with our guests. Um, Let us know how your home structure was like growing up, your earliest experiences with trauma. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I was born very premature as a baby. Normal pregnancy is 40 weeks long, and I was born at 24 weeks. And I am in my 40s. So to have a baby born that early, that many years ago, that was kind of unheard of to survive, let alone not have significant medical challenges to face that are often debilitating. So that was how I started life right out of the gate in the hospital for 3 months. Went home weighing 5 pounds. I was born weighing 2 pounds and then went home weighing 5 pounds. And growing up, my family was amazing, super close to my parents and my brother. All my grandparents lived around. Some of my dearest memories are, lake time, that sort of thing. So I really had a pretty traditional childhood in that sense of the word. And I would say, really, my first trauma that I could think of was when I had my gymnastics accident at the age of 15.
Okay, gymnastics. So I want to go back to because some folks do have premature um, kids and they struggle with the difficulties that may come along if there are any challenges. Did you have any challenges from being born premature?
Overall, nothing that has been drastically impactful in my life. I have some ear issues. My eustachian tubes don't work very well, so I do have some moderate hearing loss and deal with a lot of ear related issues. I have a vision challenge, doesn't impact me significantly, but kind of a keep an eye on it type of a thing in case it gets worse. And I have a little bit of like exercise induced asthma, sensitive lungs. But overall, like, it's pretty amazing that I am as healthy as I am, given all the advances that have happened in neonatal care from the time I was born until today. I am a neonatal nurse also. I have that as part of my nursing career. So I've not only was born premature, but got to work alongside premature babies and care for them. So I have a whole new perspective for being premature and what the families go through.
And do you think that with your upbringing, do you think that like your parents they, was just kind of normal, or did they overcompensate for, almost losing you early on? Did they hold on too tight, or did it cause any tension, between you and them once you got older?
Yeah.
What's that like?
Yeah, I love that question because I think it would be, as a parent myself, it would be so easy to have a really tight grip on that precious little child that you went through so much with. Um, in my situation, I really don't think my parents parented me any differently than if I would have been born at full term. I think they were so grateful that I made it through that challenging time, but then they really treated me just like any other kid for the most part. And I think, I mean, I wasn't raised differently, so I don't know how it would be, but I think that makes me really grateful to not be, coddled and babied and like overprotected because of how I started life.
Okay, I love that. I love that. And that's fair. It's good that a lot of parents will overprotect and then it'll cause issues in the long run. So that's
Absolutely.
yeah, that's beautiful. So it looks like you had a good life, good schooling. You were into gymnastics,
Mm-hmm.
and you said that's where your first trauma would start.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how that first trauma started from gymnastics?
Yes. So I started gymnastics at the age of 5. And it was because I was doing flips and tricks and dangerous things on the playground at school. And my teacher contacted my parents and said, you really need to get her into some sort of training because we tell her no when it's not helping. She's not stopping doing this. So at least get her some training so she doesn't get hurt. So I started gymnastics. I was very naturally flexible early on and progressed pretty rapidly through the levels of gymnastics. And by the time I was 15, I was competing at a pretty high level. At that time, there was 10 levels of traditional gymnastics before you went on to like Olympic type training. And I was at level 9 of 10. So I was in the gym 4 to 5 days a week, 4 hours each day. It really was this part-time job that was such a passion of mine for the most part. Toward the end, looking back, I realize now that I wasn't loving it as much as I should have been. And I was really putting too much pressure on myself to keep going and keep doing it. It was certainly not my parents or anything like that. It was all my own self-induced pressure. But I was at a gymnastics meet and I was warming up for the vault, and things did not go quite as planned. And I was supposed to do a trick where I rotated starting on my hands 1.5 times to my feet. And that did not happen quite right. Things got messed up. My hand placement was wrong. And I only rotated like half of a time, kind of flailed through the air. And I landed right on my head and kind of crumpled to the ground. And unfortunately, the vault apparatus was right next to where the audience was sitting. So I'm talking like 10 steps away. The audience was right there. So they all watched this happen. And it knocked the wind out of me. I couldn't breathe. My poor mother was watching all of this happen in the stands. And she said when I started to kind of turn a shade of purple, she knew it was time to get up and see if she could help. And I ended up breaking my neck in multiple places. And that was a dramatic perspective and trajectory shift of my whole life on that particular day in March.
Oh my goodness. I'm sure that was crazy to go through. Crazy is not the word actually, but what were your thoughts, coming to realizing what was going on once they were able to explain everything? What was your mind frame like at that point?
Yeah, so I was 15 years old at the time, and I wasn't really scared when it first happened. Like I knew I had fallen on my head and I had the wind knocked out of me. But I mean, I was a gymnast. I had fallen a million other times and I was fine, so to speak, as sprained ankle or something like that, but nothing significant had happened. So when I got to the hospital and they did x-rays and told me what had happened, that I broke my neck in multiple places, that's when I got really scared. And I got really scared because in our area, a collegiate level gymnast had that very same neck injury earlier that year, or maybe the year before, and she was paralyzed from the neck down. So learning that I had the exact same injury that she had, and she's paralyzed from the neck down, and I am not paralyzed yet, but worried and obviously very scared that that could happen at any moment, that was really scary.
I was going to ask, how did breaking your neck from a sport that you thought that you really, 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 really didn't love, how did it change and impact your life moving forward?
Yeah. Um, at the time, I loved it with every ounce of my being. It's looking back now that I realized that I was pushing myself into the burnout mode. So I I made the choice to stop doing gymnastics at that point. After I healed from my injury, I never had significant issues. I do have some neck pain. I have some instability now, but in the moment, didn't have any significant impact of it. But my doctors told me I could return to the sport if I wanted to, but that really felt like I was playing with fire if I would go back to the sport that I had just had a significant injury from. So I made the choice to be done with gymnastics. And it was like getting a sudden divorce from my family that I had no idea was coming. Like there was no preparation or anything like that. And very suddenly I went from, spending 20, 30 hours a week with my team and in the gym and doing this thing to cold turkey, nothing. And that was really hard to figure out, who am I beyond being a high level gymnast. So that took some time to really figure out, okay, who am I? And now I can do school activities because I'm not at the gym all the time. And now I have to create deeper friendships at school because I have more time to spend time with friends instead of always being at the gym. So it was really a pretty big shift in my world.
Understandably. So what was the, I guess, recovery process like? How long did it take? How painful, what was that experience like? Or, maybe feeling like you would never be the same.
Right.
Take us through that moment of time.
Yeah. So the recovery felt really simple given what had happened. I wore a hard neck brace, like you see people wear after a car accident or something. I wore that for a couple of weeks. And then I wore a soft neck brace for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months after that. And I did physical therapy. And that was really the extent of the recovery. It was not as painful as you might think that it would be. And really, I think that's because being a gymnast, I had so much muscle mass and, pretty strong shoulders and back muscles that there was a lot of protection that happened on my spine. And that's what prevented me from having further damage and paralysis and that sort of thing, because there was so much muscle and so much stability in there then, which is ironic now because now I'm having more neck related issues. And interesting how what was once so stable is not at all stable and causing me some challenges now. But yeah, it was not as dramatic as I thought that it might be. So I'm grateful, super grateful for that.
Okay. So I was going to ask, because you made a statement, now that you're older, you realize that you put a lot of pressure on yourself. Have you figured out why you put so much pressure on yourself
Mm-hmm.
during that time?
Mm-hmm. Um, as my story goes on, this is not the first nor the last time I would realize in hindsight that I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. And I think it's just how God made me. Like I'm an achieving, performing, efficiency, that type of person, a driven person. And I have really high expectations for myself. If you ask my family, they will all agree that, here is the bar. I want to do it here. In most everything that I do, I'm getting better at releasing that perfectionism and that sort of thing. It's getting so much better. But I think that's just how I am created to be.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to ask if you felt like you were competing against someone, maybe siblings. I didn't know. Sometimes when we get like that, it's almost like a competition.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
And interestingly, when it comes to gymnastics, the actual competition side, I didn't really care so much about. Like if I got first place, if I got sixth place, okay, cool. Like that part wasn't really huge to me. Yes, perfectionist, yes, very achieving, but not overly competitive. So I don't know. That is kind of interesting, maybe frustrating to my coach that I didn't really care if I got first or sixth place. I just wanted to have fun and do the sport. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So, once everything was kind of back in order, what was next for you? Even though it was, you're still a teenager at that point and got so much life ahead, but, what does it feel like, you were kind of made to do, or what direction were you made to take after such an injury?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I finished up high school and was figuring out, okay, what am I going to do next in my journey? I really felt like something in the medical profession was fitting, given being born premature, having this significant neck injury. My mom is in the medical profession. It just felt like a good fit. And I really love science and all those kind of things. So I ended up going to nursing school. And during nursing school, we had an opportunity to shadow in the NICU. And it was interesting because half the people in the group loved it, and half the people in the group thought it was the most boring thing ever. And I was totally in love with it the minute I walked in the door. Like calm, quiet environment, um, you know, teaching babies how to eat when their brains are still developing, gentle, slow movement so you don't startle them, really supporting parents. Like all of that felt so amazing to me and really felt like the place that I was supposed to be, let alone given my own history of being born so premature. I thought, what a cool story and a cool full circle moment to be able to take care of premature babies just like I once was. So, went to finish nursing school, worked in NICU from the time I graduated up until 2016. And I ended up actually, had a few different NICU positions. Across the country. I did some travel nursing, that kind of thing. But one of the final place that I landed was the hospital that I was actually born at. And I got to work alongside the very same nurses that took care of me as a premature baby. Now I got to be their colleague and their coworker and learn from them. And yeah, I can't say enough about how grateful I am for that whole experience. And yeah, just what a blessing that whole entire experience was.
I love it. I love it. I wanted to ask really quick, how are you coping with your gymnastic accident as an adult? Because I know you said that you have more, you feel more pressure or more of the issues now opposed to as a child.
Yeah, yeah. I don't regret doing gymnastics. Certainly not. It taught me so much. And I'm not the person, if I didn't do gymnastics, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. Um, is it frustrating now to learn certain things about my body and know that gymnastics probably made those things worse and therefore I'm having challenges with it now? Absolutely. But I still wouldn't trade in that season of my life.
Absolutely. Now, your kind of a roadmap to the career choice that you went in, working with NICU babies. For any of our viewers that are interested in that, realm of things, what does that roadmap actually look like? What type of schooling is required? What kind of was the game plan for you to get where you needed to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So interestingly, in nursing school, at least when I went to nursing school, it might be different now, but when I went to nursing school, there really was very little discussion about neonatal care, like maybe 10 minutes, and then I had the opportunity to do the shadowing. Otherwise, you don't really talk about it in nursing school because it's so specialized and so different than any other type of nursing. So if you have that desire to learn more, it really is on the job training. So for me, when I graduated from nursing school, I went right into NICU, and then I spent, oh gosh, probably 3 or 4 months working alongside another nurse, and her showing me all the ropes of the NICU because it is so different. Like the vital sign ranges are different for babies than they are for adults. And, medication doses are drastically different. And even the medications that you use are so very different. And everything is smaller, significantly smaller. So it's just a whole different world there. So I spent a good amount of time doing like a preceptorship with her in order to take care of even the healthiest of babies in the NICU. And then I had to take care of those babies for a year or two before I could move on to learning how to take care of really tiny premature babies, babies born weighing less than 1 or 2 pounds and babies on the ventilator and those babies that need a higher level of care. You really have to get your firm foundation in the healthier babies before you can start working on the more critically ill babies.
So I was gonna ask, since we're right there, you said you felt good, like you're back at you got a chance. I don't know if you're still there, but at the hospital that you worked at, where you were born, for folks that worked in the field of taking care of you, how exciting does that make you feel, like giving back? Do you connect? Do you ever get emotional connecting with your childhood to the babies now?
For sure, for sure. So many people say, how could you ever work in the NICU? Isn't that such a sad place to work? And I always say, the NICU is sad a small percentage of the time. Most of the time, the NICU is this beautiful place of growth for both the baby and the parents and the nurses. And there's such a deep relationship that's formed between the families and the nursing staff because the families are there for so long. I mean, it's not a 2-day hospital stay like many other units. We're talking 2, 3, 6 months or more. So you really become a second family. So I have to like draw this little line in the sand in my heart of how attached I can get and how far I can let myself go to the sentimental side, because otherwise I'd be a crying mess every day at work and I could never have gotten anything done. So yeah, there's I think an extra special connection knowing that I had literally been in the very same place that the babies are that I was able to take care of.
And just a random question, how were your own personal births? Did you have to, lean on or rely on heavily on your own, prenatal nurses and things like that?
Sure. So I don't know, like silly enough as a NICU nurse, I always thought, well, maybe my babies will be born small because I'm so used to taking care of small, 4, 5, 6 pound babies, even smaller. And both of my girls were kind of big babies. The first one, my older daughter, she was 9 pounds, 8 ounces, and she was 23.5 inches long. So she was not little by any means. And she was born just 2 weeks early at 38 weeks. And I'm kind of glad she didn't go longer because she would have been a lot bigger. And then my second daughter was smaller, but she was still 8 pounds and 8 ounces. So she was not tiny by any means, and also born at 38 weeks. And, they were fine. They were fine pregnancies and deliveries and all of that kind of stuff. So grateful for that, and that I didn't need the NICU care. But just kind of funny that I was so used to taking care of babies, I could put it in my pocket, and my own babies were like 3 times the size of the babies that I took care of.
I have a question because I can only imagine the weight on parents that don't know how to cope or deal with mothering or fathering a preemie baby. Do you ever in this field see where parents don't connect with the babies and maybe have a separation from them, that they're not there for the babies as much?
Yeah, sometimes that does happen, especially if, the parents are out of town. There are certainly times when family lives in a different town or community than the NICU. So oftentimes, the baby is 4 hours away from home where the parents are, and the parents can only come up on the weekend, because they're having to try to work during the week so that they can save some of their maternity leave or paternity leave for when the baby comes home. And that makes it harder to connect with your baby when you're not there every single day. And I know now there's so many more advances with FaceTime and, NICU connection cameras and those kind of things that really help forge that connection, that are helpful, but it certainly does happen sometimes.
And I'm pretty sure, understandably, you probably have seen breakdown between relationships, marriages, and things like that, due to the stress
Yeah.
of a premature baby, or depending on, what the severity of it, I should say. What are, I guess, some pieces of advice that you would have for, parents going through that and being able to maintain, their connection above all else, and the stress of the whole situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I were giving support to someone who had a NICU baby today, I would absolutely recommend giving yourself breaks. It is so very tempting to be in the NICU 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because you love your baby so deeply. You don't want to spend a minute apart from them. But also, you need to take care of you and your home and your relationship, like you said. So you have to go home and eat and shower and sleep, and go have dinner with your spouse and connect again and talk about something else besides the baby that's in the NICU. And also, being super honest with your medical team about what you're struggling with. Maybe they have resources for you that you aren't even aware of. There's so many NICU support groups now for parents and families and even siblings that have a sibling in the NICU. So many support groups that are amazing to help walk that journey with you. And then also asking for and being willing to receive help and support. Like when you have a baby in the NICU, or even a healthy baby, people are often asking, oh, what can I do? Let me know. Well, let me know. And, be really specific. It would be so amazing if you could mow my yard for me today. Or I could really use dinner 3 nights this week, or a gas card to get to the hospital. Like, don't be afraid to use your village and ask for help, because they love you and they want to support you. So let them love on you in this way during this challenging time.
Wonderful advice. And while we're there, because we're very big on resources, does the hospital and the NIC unit have a lot of resources for parents that are struggling or maybe need some professional help to get them through the transition, especially parents that are having issues with affordable care? Because I think that's another reason why some folks don't reach out, is because they can't afford the medical piece of it. So they try to cope with it themselves.
Absolutely. That is true more often than not, I think. And in those situations, yes, every hospital with a NICU will certainly have a social worker that will have community resources for you. They will likely have a foundation that might be able to help ease the burden of the medical costs related to the NICU stay. A lot of times there's grant funding and, donations from the community, that sort of thing that can help families who are struggling. Because let's be honest, even without a NICU baby right now, times are tight. The economy is tough right now. And so I can only imagine adding that extra financial burden on top of things. So don't be afraid to ask for support and help. And you might be surprised at the different ways that support is available.
Absolutely. Well, I had a really good question. I totally forgot. Excuse me. Let's see. Oh, are there any, excuse me, significant standout, cases or just memories you have with working in the NICU that really kind of did you in? You weren't able to keep your, kind of stone game face, that kind of haunts you to this day?
Yeah, for sure. I can think of pretty vividly a handful of them. And I can very much still pinpoint, what I was wearing that day and the family and the room I was in and that sort of thing. And both good and not so good outcomes. And those stories, they have a very special place in my heart. And thanks to the, joys of social media, I'm actually able to still stay in touch with a lot of the families that I took care of, which is really the coolest thing. A set of twin babies that I took care of when I very first became a nurse. I think they just turned 20 years old, and I've been able to watch their lives this whole time. And it's just the coolest thing to know that I had a role in their life, and that their family is so grateful for me. And I am grateful for them because we grew together. I grew as a nurse, they grew as a family together. And it's just pretty special. Not everyone gets that opportunity, and it's pretty special.
I love it. I wanted to ask, taking care of the babies, what all goes into keeping premature babies alive and making sure they're healthy? Like, we also would love for people to say, for the people that get frustrated at nurses, like all that y'all are doing to keep the babies alive and incubators, all kinds of stuff. So I know a lot goes into that. Can you share with us some of the things that goes into that so families can understand how much work y'all are putting into this?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a NICU nurse, I am responsible for all of their body systems. And when you think about your own body, there's so many things happening that you don't even realize are happening. Your heart is beating, you're breathing, you're digesting food, all those kind of things are happening. And as a NICU nurse, I have to have like the second set of eyes to know what's going on inside of that little body, so that I can be aware if something is not going right. So constantly we are monitoring heart rate, oxygen, breathing, temperature regulation is huge, skin condition, protecting their skin because it's so fragile and frail and still developing. And probably the biggest thing of all, along with infection prevention, is the development of their brain. We don't think about that because they look like a little human, and they are a little human, but their brain has not developed fully like it would be if they were still in the womb. So many things go into that. Developmental care is the kind of the overarching term for that brain and development support. And I think that part can be a part that parents sometimes don't understand. Why do we have to have the lights off? Why can I only hold the baby once a day? Why does it have to be so quiet? Why do you restrict visitors? All those things that might seem strange and foreign to someone who's not living in that world, they're so important to the baby and their developing brain and their outcomes long term.
Absolutely. Now, what can the, average, normal, regular person do to support families, NICU babies, that may not have a direct correlation to anybody in the NICU, but, if anybody did want to support the cause or, previously were NICU family, what are some ways that they can show support or assist with NICU families?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a few ways. Likely there's a NICU support group in your community. So you could certainly find that. The March of Dimes is a huge supporter of prematurity and NICU babies. And another thing that's really fun that people don't often think about is like donating things that the NICU might use. Like maybe that is, like a radio so they can play soothing music for the babies, or maybe it's books so that the siblings have something to do when they come see their NICU baby. Um, all of those kind of things that are kind of small but tangible and pretty realistic ways to help. Huge help, and hugely appreciated by NICU staff and families.
And just real quick, does like the donation of breast milk help NICU women as well?
It can. NICU babies will use donated breast milk, but they have to get it through a milk bank. So it has to be like pasteurized and processed and all of that. As you can't just like bring it into the NICU. So that is another way you can get in touch with your local breast milk bank, and then that could support not only NICU babies but other babies that might be interested or need that level of support as well.
And I was going to say, what about clothing and diapers and stuff like that as well?
For sure. Usually diapers come from the hospital budget, so that's a pretty easy one. But clothes sometimes are helpful too, especially just finding, the premature size clothes. But there are too, sometimes people don't think about it. Sometimes there's full-term babies that go to the NICU because they're having breathing trouble or that sort of thing. So sometimes we have an overabundance of tiny premature clothes, but really we need an outfit that's going to fit a baby that weighs 8 pounds because, they might need a little extra help and support for a while they're there as well. So absolutely good idea on the clothing.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to ask, how do you hold up after taking care of a premature child or a child in general? Because now you've opened up that there are babies just besides premature babies that come in the NIC unit. How do you hold up like mentally after you're taking care of a child and they may not survive? I know that mentally that has to be having an effect on you.
Absolutely. I think for me personally, I have a strong faith in God. And so I just have to take it back to that faith in God's plans, and that I know as a NICU nurse that I never want to do something that is going to cause harm or excessive pain to this baby. And if we would have continued doing whatever life-saving measure that we were trying to do, it would have been causing more harm than good. So just always remembering that side of things, and also being okay with sitting in your own emotion and your own sadness that baby's life ended before anyone was ready for it to.
Understood. Now, at what point, in your career did you decide to get into your own business, Cedar Wellness and Coaching? How was the idea? How did you enter that idea? How did that come about for you? And how long have you been in the works?
Yes. So I did NICU up until 2016, and then in December 2016. And then in January 2017, I was working like usual. And one day I woke up very, very sick. And to make a really long story as short as we can, I ended up, doctors did not know what was wrong with me. I was debilitated to the point where I was crawling instead of walking. I could not handle any type of noise, like even the TV, the microwave, people talking to me. I had to wear sunglasses inside. I was very, very dizzy and had significant pain. All these things were happening, and the doctors had no idea why, because every lab result, x-ray, every single thing we did was normal. And it took probably 6 months before we realized that I had a rare neurologic issue called a spontaneous spinal fluid leak. So it was through this whole medical journey. We got the spinal fluid leak fixed. It's taken years to recover. I still have some lasting issues from it and probably always will. But relearned how to walk and drive and read and cook and all these things. I had to learn how to do all these things again because of this significant health journey. So it was through that whole thing, having to suddenly, kind of like the gymnastics situation, very suddenly leave this thing that I loved so much, and figure out who I was without being a NICU nurse anymore. And in the past 2 years, I have recovered enough physically from my health journey that I was ready to start supporting people again in the nursing way. So I have started my own business, Cedar Wellness and Coaching, as a holistic life coach and a wellness coach to support people in a holistic, whole body approach to the things that feel heavy in life. And it has allowed me to serve people again while still taking care of myself and giving my own body the rest and grace that it needs.
Wow. So I want to ask, can you say the diagnose again? Because I want to get the name.
I know that was a whole loaded question and answer. So the primary problem was a spontaneous spinal fluid leak. So with your spinal cord, if you think of your spinal cord and your brain, they're hooked together and there's a lining around it, kind of like a water balloon. And there's fluid inside that protects your spinal cord and keeps your brain floating in your skull. And some people hear of a spinal fluid leak, or also called a CSF leak. Some people are familiar with that after having an epidural with labor for childbirth. So sometimes you can be leaking spinal fluid after the epidural. You get a terrible headache. They patch that leak and then you're feeling better. That's the most common one that most people are familiar with. So when you're leaking spinal fluid, if you think of a water bottle that is full of water and sitting upright, if there's a hole in it right here and you're sitting upright, the water's going to squirt out, right? But if you lay it flat, the water's still going to squirt out, but not as forcefully because gravity, right? So same is true with your body. When you have a spinal fluid leak, when you are upright, the fluid is leaking out more rapidly and more significantly, causing your brain to drop in your skull. So every time you sit or stand, basically you get a mini concussion with every time you sit or stand while you're leaking spinal fluid. So when you lay flat, which is what I figured out to do over time when I was sick and no one knew what was going on with me, I figured out it was better laying flat, which is why I also started crawling to get places. Then I wasn't leaking spinal fluid as quickly and I wasn't having that falling of my brain in my skull. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, was it on me? Okay. So now, with that being said, that kind of seems like that, kind of sat you down. So how long was that recovery? And, how long did it take for, the whole plan to fabricate into making your own kind of business here?
Yeah. So really from the start of it in 2017, and the following issues, not only just the CSF leak, but also because of that, and because I was basically bed bound 24 hours a day, pretty much for an entire year, my nervous system kind of forgot how to function while I was upright. So I developed dysautonomia, which a lot of people nowadays with long COVID are also experiencing dysautonomia and POTS. So that's a misregulation of your autonomic nervous system. So the one that controls heart rate, blood pressure, temperature regulation, dizziness, that sort of thing. Mine kind of went all haywire. I kind of tease and say that I became allergic to gravity. So healing that and some of my own other unique medical history, including breaking my neck as a gymnast, I have been doing a really specialized physical therapy that really has become all encompassing, a holistic approach that includes vision, dental, special shoes, vestibular therapy, all these kind of things. I've been doing this whole recovery program from the end of 2017 until today. I still do physical therapy every single day at home. And so really it was a full-time job. Recovery and rehabilitation was a full-time job from 2017 until 2023 last year when I opened my business. And now it's still mostly a full-time job. I just do some business also on the side.
Okay. I want to ask us, I like to put things together.
Yeah.
So the spontaneous spinal fluid leak, I was going to ask, what are the symptoms and how long did you have the symptoms? Like, when did you realize that you had the symptoms? And was that the cause of, because of you being bed bound?
Yes. Yep.
And then you said dysomnia, dysomnia.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Okay, yeah. So in that, all of that affected the nerve system.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. You got
Yeah,
it. You followed well. Yes.
yeah.
So,
So I was, yeah. How did, yeah? What are the
yeah,
symptoms?
absolutely. So symptoms of a CSF leak, headache, a positional headache. So a headache that is worse when you are sitting or standing. It gets better when you are laying down and like flat, totally flat laying down, not with a pillow, like flat laying down. Nausea, dizziness, confusion, uh, brain fog, like inability to remember things, pain, significant head pain. It feels like someone's hitting you with a baseball bat right at the base of your skull every time you sit or stand. Um, and the challenge is those symptoms can also represent a million other things. I mean, that is very similar symptoms to meningitis and a concussion and certain infections. And so there's so many other things that are so much more common that doctors start looking for before they would ever consider a spontaneous spinal fluid leak. So the rarity of a spontaneous spinal fluid leak is 1 in 100,000 people. So like I live near a town of 300,000 people. So that would be 3 of us in the whole city would have that condition. And it took 6 months of me having those symptoms before I found a doctor who would even consider. I really figured out what was going on with me about month 3 because all the other doctors weren't coming up with anything. And about month 3, it was when I decided, okay, my doctors aren't figuring this out. I have to figure it out on my own. So I figured it out and I began to pull scientific research. And then I just had to take it with me to each doctor I went to and literally pray that they would be open-minded enough to consider the possibility that this is what I had going on. And finally, the doctor who diagnosed me, I didn't even have to pull out my research. He looked at me and said, I think you have a spontaneous spinal fluid leak. It was so validating to just feel heard enough to actually get a diagnosis, because then I knew we could create a treatment plan from that.
So how many doctors did you go through?
Oh gosh, probably 10.
Ooh.
Yeah. Emergency room, a few, neurologists locally and out of state, pain doctors, specialists. Yeah. Lots of people said, everything's normal. I don't know what's wrong. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Super frustrating as a nurse, especially, and as a patient.
That was kind of my next point. Does that kind of make you lose faith in the system in a sense? Because it's just like, looking at from the perspective of a regular person, that has no idea about anything in the medical sector, how hard it was for, a licensed nurse, a neonatal nurse,
Right.
kind of should know a little bit of what they're talking about and still not being heard. So, you know, did you form any type of ill feelings, ill will, you know, even towards the you know, medical sector itself, or even towards doctors? I know, you know, in the general sense, a lot of doctors sometimes don't give nurses the respect they deserve just on a regular basis. So,
Yeah.
you know, did it kind of escalate those feelings, or kind of make you glad that you even kind of took it a different route at that
Yes.
point?
Yeah, for sure. It was really frustrating. And it just, every time it made me think, why does this have to be so hard? Like, this is their job to support me and help figure out what's wrong with me. And I am, like you said, a very educated nurse. I have a master's degree in nursing. I am well versed in interpreting research and my own symptoms. I speak English as my primary language, and I was going to the hospital that I worked at. You would think that I would have gotten excellent treatment and it would have been very easy to figure out what was going on with me, and everyone would listen to exactly what I was saying. And that was not the case. So every time I would go through another struggle, my heart went out to the people who are not familiar with the medical world. They don't know the language because it is a whole different language. And if you don't speak it, sometimes you can't get the results that you need. And talking about speaking languages, not only speaking the medical world language, but speaking English as your first language. Like, I can't fathom trying to go through this with English as my second language, being unfamiliar with the medical system and not having a support system. I just can't fathom how people do it. It is understandable why this disease has a higher rate of suicide than some others, because it's so painful and it would be so frustrating. And it's really, my health journey is one of the reasons that now I support people in a holistic way, whole body, mind, and spirit, and am far more open to alternative healing methods than I probably was when I was a neonatal nurse, because I've learned that traditional medicine doesn't always fill in all of the gaps, and you really need some holistic approaches to help the person be as well as they can be.
I was going to ask, how did this change your life, when you found out that you had this rare disease, and did you ever feel like giving up?
Yes, for sure. There were some days when every doctor had told me that the results are normal. Sorry, I think you're getting blinded by the sun. There, that might help a little bit. Every doctor had said that the results are normal. Are you just being dramatic? Maybe you're drug seeking. Maybe you're making this up. Maybe you have a psychiatric condition instead of a physical condition. All of these things, to really use the word gaslighting, which is so frequently used now, it really made me start to wonder about my own sanity and what was happening in my body. And there were times where I thought, I don't know if I can do this. I never had the thought that I wanted to end my life, because I knew I had two little girls on the other side of that bedroom door who were waiting for their mom to feel better. And that's the part that still makes me teary to this day to even talk about it, is knowing that those little girls and my husband, they need me. Whatever form that I can be in, they need me, and they deserve me to be the best that I can be. So I have to keep fighting, if only for them.
And Demetria, did you want to go ahead, flip flop?
Yep. First, Sarah, we want to thank you because we're almost at time.
Yeah.
So I have my piece and Sid, and I'm going to finish it off. I wanted to know, can you give advice to those watching that may have been born premature, has had a childhood injury that affects them now, and even someone that may be going through spontaneous spiral fluid leak? Can you give advice how to help them through the hurt or the suffering or the pain that they may be going through right now, just so that they can start the journey to healing?
Yes. Yes. If you are in a season of struggle right now, whatever the reason is, I just encourage you, don't feel like you're in this alone. Find support, whether it's your best friend, whether it's a support group on social media, whether it's a professional therapist, a coach, something like that. Find a safe person that you can talk to about this and be super vulnerable, because you can't walk this journey alone. If you try to carry this burden on your own, you're going to crumble. So ask for support, lean on your faith if you have it. Um, just know that better days are coming and it's worth continuing to fight.
Absolutely. So we have come to our segment that we call Shameless Plug. You see all of your information scrolling here at the bottom. You can let our viewers know how they can enlist your services, contact you, anything that you have for sale, anything you want to draw traffic to. The floor is yours.
Yeah, for sure. So my business is called Cedar Wellness and Coaching, and it is holistic life coaching. And I also have some holistic wellness products that I have created by hand, by myself, that have been really helpful in my own wellness journey. So I have those available in the shop. If you're interested in coaching, I always offer one free session to anyone who just wants to explore things and see what it's like to have that type of support. So you can check out my Facebook and my Instagram page. And I also have the book I wrote about my whole journey from being born premature to all the way up to my health journey and more. That is available on Amazon as well, or on Amazon. And that is called When Grit and Grace Collide, Persevering Through Life's Challenges with Grit and God's Grace. And you'll get to know a little more about my story.
Awesome. We want to thank you because what we love is giving different information, and all the information is informative. So you just gave a totally different perspective on quite a few topics, being premature, gymnastics, accident that changed your life, a rare disease as you got older that changed your life, being a wife, a mother. I mean, just through your journey from going healthy to bedridden. So look at you now. You're moving, you're smiling, you're not in the bed
Right.
anymore. So, there is trust that God can do all things as long as we believe
Yes.
and believe in ourselves to do it,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So we want to thank you for being a guest on Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. It was an honor. Thank you for contributing to our platform and growing it and sharing such an amazing life experience. We truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for letting me share my story. I appreciate it. It's been an honor to spend time with you all.
Thank you. And thank you all for tuning into Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. You heard it here. For parents that are struggling, that have had premature kids or going through it, we hope that Sarah's testimony touched you. If you have been in an accident, we hope that Sarah's testimony can help you. And if you're going through the rare diseases, we hope that Sarah's testimony can help you start the journey to healing. And we're going to continue to share life experiences. Ain't that right, Sid?
That's right.
You know it. Y'all have a blessed day, and we will see you soon.